I can see you, yeah. I don't have a camera here at the moment, which is probably good because I've got the ISO beard going, so... First of all, I wanted to say congratulations on this documentary. I've watched a lot of music documentaries over the years, and I have to say this is one of the best music documentaries I've ever seen, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Great, thank you. Always good to hear.
So, Cody, Gracie, I wanted to ask, where did this idea originate for you? This sounds like it would have been an absolutely amazing journey to go on putting together this documentary, but where did it originate for both of you?
I have been working in the documentary space for a number of years, and I was sort of looking for my next big project to coincide with launching my company, Rush Films, and I had always known about this studio because my mum lived on the island of Montserrat. She was a painter in the 70s, and she went down there, met Sir George Martin, who produced the Beatles, who was setting up his studio, and lived down there for the first few years of the studio's existence, and would sell her artwork to the musicians who would come down to the island. So that was where it originated, and then it was a 2-year process of trying to put it all together and get shooting, which is always quite tricky to do in the world of filmmaking, but we got there in the end.
And Gracie, for you, how did you become involved with the project, and did you know much about the Montserrat history as well?
No, I didn't know anything about it. I remember when Cody first called me, and she'd done this 60 or 70 page research doc, and she'd interviewed Sting, and I was really sick at the time, and I think Cody was sick, and her voice was so crackled I could barely hear it, but she was telling me stuff, and I was trying to write at the same time to Google. I remember I just Googled the police, but then all these images of cops came up, and I was trying to concentrate on the phone, being like, oh my god, there's so many. And I was trying to work out how to spell Montserrat on the phone, being like, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, this sounds great. And then I watched the sizzle reel, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. It already felt like kind of the trailer. And I think coming from my last documentary that had, a lot of celebrities in it and a lot of, people, it was kind of like, yeah, well, let's tell this story in the best 360 way, and let's aim high and try to get all the musicians. And, Cody really wanted to have all the locals who worked at the studio in the film, which was integral and important to having their side of it, as well as, trying to tell Sir George Martin's brief history at the start to catch audiences up who might not know about him. And then the island, the hurricane, the volcano. So it was kind of more just what are we going to take out and where do we start? It wasn't like a documentary where you go, well, what's going to be the third act and how do we get enough stuff to make a film? It was very much like, how does this not a 10-part series?
And were you both fans of the music that was recorded there? Because it really came across in this documentary that you might have been fans because you seem to know the topic so exceptionally well.
I was a fan. I mean, I love the Dire Straits, the Police. I've got Beatle fever. I'm just obsessed with the Beatles. So I was, but Gracie wasn't. Like she said, she was like, who are the Dire Straits? Who are the Police? But both of us became, during the research period, I think really engrossed with all of their stories. And as we now frequently say now, we could go on hard quiz about 1980s music because we just had to get so deep into understanding who all the band members were, what was going on in the recording industry. So, yeah, I went from fan to, super geek. And I think Gracie went from, knowing nothing to fan, I would say.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process because you do, I don't know, you just find out so much by researching all the bands and then getting to interview all the people as well and sitting down for usually an hour with them. You just get so much out of that also goes into the research of other things. And I think for us both not being big music buffs or, fanboys of the bands also help because you're kind of going in with a more naive approach to it and going in curious and just going, well, I'm interested about that and not, sometimes you can kind of otherwise pass something by because you think, oh, I should know about that. Whereas I think going, all right, I've got to really research this and know as much as I can to get the best out of the interviewers. Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to do it.
One of the things that I found so interesting on the documentary was something that Cody has already mentioned, and that was having the locals involved with the documentary as well. Tell us a little bit about how important that was to both of you, because that gave an entirely different side of the story to everybody watching this documentary as well.
Yeah, I am having grown up with a lot of the people that are in the film, Danny the Windsurfer and, Manetta and Rose, who's on the radio show. I was like, they have to be in the film. They're the heart of the story. They're so fantastic. And then I think when Gracie met them, she was like, oh, yeah, I get this. I understand why they're so integral. But when we interviewed Sting, he straight off the bat had so many amazing memories about the chef and about Danny the Windsurfer that was another moment where it was just like, you can't really tell this story without these people, because obviously they had such an impact on the musicians themselves. So it ended up coming together in a way that was really organic, because the musicians spoke about them, they spoke about the musicians, and it was really heartwarming.
Awesome. And Gracie, I wanted to ask you as well, what was that like for you going to Montserrat the first time to work on this film? That must have been a bit of an emotional journey as well.
Yeah, it was. I think, when we got there, it was such a long journey to get there. We flew from London to Miami to Antigua. I can't remember how far it was, but we'd flown from Australia before that, a week before. Then we caught this ferry from Antigua one night, it was like pitch black. We kind of got into customs, which was quite slow, the customs process, and we had 18 bags of equipment, and but it was that hot island night where you saw the black sand and you saw all the cliff faces, and it just had this, then I woke up the next morning, obviously a bit jet lagged, and there were just so many animal sounds and birds and sounds I hadn't heard on it. Sorry, someone's decided to vacuum in the apartment building just as I was talking. I just got distracted. Hearing the sounds of that and then seeing all the colourful homes, and then I think, the flip side of seeing the absolute devastation of what the volcano had done. And, I'd been to Pompeii when I was a kid. I didn't study enough about volcanoes or geography or history or anything like that, but going there was such an emotional thing to see, the devastation that was there, but also had this really eerie thing about it. And it was like, being in almost like an open museum of like the past time or something. It was odd, yeah.
You mentioned it feeling like a museum. Is there ever any plans to actually bring the studios back, even as a museum or something like that?
Yeah, there's constant discussion about this. My opinion on it is, as you've seen the film, it is the building is falling apart. It's actually quite hazardous to be walking around there. I think it would be quite difficult to bring it back. I think doing some kind of viewing platform where people can see it would probably be the safest way to bring it back. But it's also, George Martin, Judy Martin, they all say in the film, everything's got a period, and Judy Martin says, I think it should go back to the jungle where it came from. And after doing all of those interviews, I definitely share that sentiment. It had a period and it was a time in history, but I think now the jungle needs to sort of reclaim back that space. And lucky enough, we've got all the amazing photos of our studios to look back on.
And the music. To listen to forever.
Talking about the Martin family, what was their initial reaction when you went to them about this idea for the documentary? Because this feels like a story that's never been told on screen before.
Yeah, there had been other groups that had tried to actually make this film prior, but they'd never felt that the teams that had approached them were the right teams. And I, had written a letter to the Martin estate, and I think them knowing that they'd known my mum, and I think them knowing that we were going to do the story justice, because I had a real love and fondness for Montserrat, was probably what got them over the line. And then I think the moment making the film that still has the most impact for me was Gracie and I sent a copy of the rough cut maybe to the Martin estate, and we got back the most beautiful response about how much they loved the film. And I think, outside of everything that we ever did making this film, that's the moment that really has meant the most to me, is that they love the film and they're really proud of it as well. So it's pretty special. Definitely.
And Gracie, as the documentary's director, as I said, this is an amazing documentary, and one of the things that makes it so amazing is all the archival footage that's in there of the actual studios. Did that archival footage come from the Martin family, or did that come from the artists themselves? And how much did you have to go through to work out what went into the documentary and what didn't?
Well, firstly, we had a lot of archive from Cody, from her mum, from the Martin estate, a lot of photographs of when the studio was built. And then we worked with Lisa Savage as an archive producer that worked on my first film. and she came on board to research more and, you know, find things. And then we were really lucky that a lot of the people like Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland, Paul McCartney had home video footage or amazing candid still photographs as well. And then it was just, like a hunt to try and find more stuff. And also, I think, you know, Lisa found this beautiful footage of Montserrat and Plymouth, the capital back in the day. And, you know, before you buy archive, it comes as a very low quality file. And so we'd been editing away with that, which, you know, didn't look that good. And when we got it blown up and had paid for it and got the beautiful, you felt that, you know, it was like that amazing footage of it back in the day. And that to me was like really exciting to see that once it was colour graded and in the best, you know, I think it was shot on 35mm. But there was so much, archive to find. I mean, Cody's got a great story about how her dad had a recording of Stevie Wonder in the attic or basement.
Awesome. Cody, can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, when I was researching the film, I was like having a glass of wine one night with my dad, and he was like, I actually have a recording, I think, of Stevie Wonder singing at a bar in Montserrat, but it's in like the loft of his house in Fremantle, West Australia. And so he went up there and was digging through boxes, and he pulled out this cassette tape, and I got it digitized, and it is an hour-long recording of Stevie at the local bar. There's a snippet of it in the film, and he's jamming about the people of Montserrat, studio, Paul McCartney, and then he goes on, which is not in the film, but he goes on to sing all of his biggest hits live, and everyone in the bar is singing along, and it's just like one of those, like, it's a piece of gold. I can't even believe it was sitting in the attic of my dad's house for so long. And you can actually see in the film there's a guy on stage that's holding a recorder up to Stevie Wonder while he's singing. So whoever that man was, you know, we owe him a lot because it's just the most amazing piece of recording.
Definitely. Well, Gracie, Cody, I want to say thank you so much for chatting to us. I know we're running out of time very, very quickly. To finish off, what would you like to say to all the music fans out there who are going to sit down and watch this doco? Because I know for myself, I've been a music and film journalist now for 25 years, and I love this documentary. I've put together a Montserrat Spotify playlist and everything for myself.
Okay.
So what would you like to say? What would you like?
Send it to us because we've got a playlist of the songs that we like.
I've got one on Spotify too that I'm kind of putting together. I think what we'd like to say to the fans is I hope that this film gives an insight. You know, we didn't want to just go into all the details of the recording. We wanted to go into the history of the bands and what they were going through at that time and how they were coming together. It's a film about creative process. So if they're interested in learning a little bit more about the band's relationships at the time and where they were in the music world, then it's definitely, I would say, a film for them.
Awesome. Gracie, any last words?
No, I think Cody said that really well. I think,
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for the time chatting to us today, and thank you for such an amazing music documentary as well.